I'll declare a quorum. I'm going to call the City of Groton Mayor and Council meeting for Monday, January 7, 2019 to order. Clerk Patrick, please call the roll.
Present are Mayor Keith Hedrick, Deputy Mayor Lawrence Garish, Councilors Jill Rusk, Jamal Beckford, Stephen Sheffield, Guinevere Depot, Rashad Carter, Finance Director Ron Uhas, Clerk Deborah Patrick.
Please rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Recognition, awards, and memorials. Council. Okay. We will move to receipt of citizens' petitions / comments. Receipt of citizens' petition is the portion of the council meeting where the council welcomes comments from citizens. To address the council, please sign a sheet at the table early in front of the meeting room. When you're recognized, please approach the podium. Clearly state your name and address and speak into the microphone. Each presentation should be limited to 5 minutes or less, and citizens should, if possible, submit emailed or written comments. Presentations should be related to matters pertinent to the City of Groton. City councilors will only ask questions in order to clarify the speaker's presentation and can respond during the response to citizens' petitions portion of the meeting. Okay. Clerk Patrick.
Okay, Susan Archer, and you may have to switch the microphone on.
There we go. And I have copies. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Susan Archer, and I reside in the town of Groton at 112 Spyglass Circle. I'm here in my role as the president of the Friends of the Mother Bailey House Foundation. Mayor Hedrick has been very diligent in keeping us in the loop about the condition of the house and the most recent concerns. We also greatly appreciate the opportunities we've had to use the house as part of history-based events like Groton Bank Day or the Haunted Tours. As most of you know, we have been working for about 18 months now to raise funds in hopes of restoring the Mother Bailey House and preserving Mother Bailey's legacy by turning the house into a combination visitor center, museum, and cornerstone for the historic Groton Bank. To date, we have raised more than $10,000. Unfortunately, that falls significantly short of the financial level necessary to restore the house at this time, given its current state of disrepair and deterioration. We do have members who have been researching grant options, given that the municipality owns the house, and would certainly be willing to work with the city to develop grant proposals to fund any environmental cleanup identified in the upcoming study, as well as structural repairs to alter the deterioration and overhaul the infrastructure of the house, and later renovation to make the house suitable for occupancy. Several of our group's members are residents of the City of Groton, and much like their neighbors, are here or gave messages because they embrace the rich history of the Groton Bank area. Our concern is with the disposition of the Mother Bailey House. I think it's safe to say that anyone who knows Mother Bailey's contributions and significance, both locally and nationally, would not want to see her house destroyed unless we are in a safety-related last resort type scenario. It seems that any decisions regarding the future of the Mother Bailey House must hinge on an environmental report. Therefore, we propose that a final decision about any request for proposals and its terms be delayed until everyone has the opportunity to review the environmental report and consider all possible options. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a quick question?
To clarify, yes.
When you're talking about the grant options, are the grant options only available if the city owns the property?
No, but one of the things that we looked into more recently was grant options based on the city owning the property because we weren't in a position to own the property ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for clarification? Okay, Deb?
Jane Sinclair.
My name is Jane Cloquet, and I live at 380 Thames Street. I'm retired.
I consider Groton Bank to be my neighborhood. I regularly walk Thames Street, picking up litter and doing my best to ensure that it is a welcoming, pleasant place to be. I have raised funds to install enlarged historic photographs in the storefront windows of the old Army-Navy building on Thames Street. I consider the Mother Bailey House to be an integral part of my neighborhood. It's part of the historic fabric that makes up the historic Groton Bank. I've also applied to the city of Groton to adopt Thames Street under its Adopt a Highway ordinance. The Mother Bailey House reminds all Groton residents and passersby of the courage of Mother Bailey, who tended to the wounded at the Battle of Groton Heights, and as a staunch patriot who years later, during the War of 1812, inspired the soldiers at Fort Griswold by providing the flannel for her petticoat for the critical wadding for their cannons, and even offering the same to aid Stonington when they were attacked in the war. Citizens of the city need not only basic services, but they also need the faith inspired by their churches and the inspiration of their historic sites. I feel strongly that the city should not declare the Mother Bailey House surplus property, but instead embrace the house. I would make a little aside here. I grew up around in this area, but I was living in Western Massachusetts for 25 years, and in the small town of 1,000 people, one of the women wrote a grant, a matching grant for $500,000. The city matched it, the town of 1,000 people matched it for $500,000, so we would have $1 million to restore this building, which was one of the first academy buildings in the country. It was preceded Deerfield Academy. I have experience working on grants from my employment at Breezeway Farms Consulting, a grant writing firm that successfully obtained federal small city block grants for $200,000 to $300,000 for the cities of Fairhaven, Athol, Buckland in Massachusetts. I have been working with the Friends of the Mother Bailey House, researching local, state, and national grants to raise money, and compiled a 15-page spreadsheet of information for all of these grants. In the course of this time, I have found that we had felt we were limited, and the Friends, to wait until we were a 501c3 corporation, but we found out that we can apply for grants if the city signs with us. That's no financial involvement of the city, but they are a certified government entity. And should we be able to raise the matching funds through in-kind services, and many of them, then we would be eligible for these matching grants. You go to the supermarket, they say you purchase something, you get 50% off. I know myself, I go for that. Historic matching grants are up to $100,000 are available, which be matched would be $200,000. The move to declare the building surplus property would erase those opportunities for us to raise those matching funds. There are other funds available, that we can apply for. Frankly, as a resident of the city, I feel I would instead counter the suggestion on the agenda tonight to declare it as surplus property, but instead actually asked that the city matches $50,000 to $100,000 to obtain a historical restoration grant that would fund needed repairs to the building and put the city in a better position should it decide to dispose of or sell the building at a later date. Can I have more? The grants are on a rolling deadline, with a decision being made a month after the application has been submitted. I'm willing to donate my time to do the grant writing while coordinating with the designated city personnel. I've been speaking with the Mary Dunn, Alyssa Luzapone, Todd Levine at the State Historic Preservation Office. They have been all enthusiastic and supportive of our grant applications. I've also spoken with Brad Scheid of the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation, which is a nonprofit partner of the State Historic Preservation Office. He is also very supportive of restoring the house, which he describes as a wonderful house with a fantastic history. Brad has indicated a willingness to work with the city to ready the house and to explore options to keep the house viable, perhaps to rehab the house for sale with a preservation easement. I'm proposing that you table this resolution and explore options such as these. I also have a copy.
I need you to wrap it up. 'cause
This is
you have
it.
5 minutes.
I'm going to hand out and circulate this, which is proclamation by George W. Bush in 2001, Women's History Month. Our nation boasts a rich history of women whose heroic achievements.
Time is up, excuse me.
And so it was Anna Warner Bailey's Courage in the War. This was part of his proclamation. So that's it. If I'd like to circulate that along with.
Can add it to the record.
All text, please.
Honorable Mayor and councilors, as some of you may know, my name is Tom Altice. I've been a resident of the city for 50 years at the corner of Monument and Meridian Streets, and I've also been active in town politics, community organizations, and have promoted local history. I'm also the founder and president of the Groton Bank Historical Association, which since the early 70s has researched and promoted the history of the Groton Bank and encouraging the maintenance of it as a historic village in character. Several years ago, of course, I was pleased to see the city acquire the Mother Bailey House. At that time, they planned to restore it, repair it, restore it, and keep it safe into eternity. So I'm sorry that those objectives seem to have changed. Some I know don't want to spend any money on it. I think that is unreasonable. Some people would like to tear it down. I think that is negligent. And others think that it should just be sold as surplus property, which I think is foolish and short-sighted. There are other options to consider before doing any of these, and that is to develop a relationship or a partnership with an organization that will work to get government grants and restore it. And obviously, from what's been said, one of those organizations would obviously be the Friends of the Mother Bailey House, which are currently in existence. Given the fact that this is the most historic house in Groton and one of the most historic houses in southeastern Connecticut, you as members of the council should be sensitive to how it relates to the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, and the history of Groton. Let us not forget that this house was the home of a resident who was not only important locally, but in the state and even nationally, that being she being Anna Warner Bailey. The house has been visited by 3 U.S. presidents and General Lafayette. How many houses have been even visited by 1 president, let alone 3? That testifies to what his significance was at the time. And President Jackson gave, as you probably know, the fence that used to be around it, part of which still remains. The house is a stately Center Hall Colonial built in 1782 for Dr. Amos Prentice, who was the physician who tended the wounded after the battle, and Anna Warner Bailey assisted him in doing that. She then married a defender of Fort Griswold, Elisha Bailey, and she and Elisha Bailey bought the house from Dr. Prentice in 1805 and lived there for nearly 50 years. Elisha Bailey was also the postmaster of Groton, and for nearly 50 years that house was also the post office of Groton. And so it has, that was in the first half of the 19th century. In the late 1800s, a prominent a political figure, Jeremiah George Harris, who was active in foreign affairs, owned the house for a number of decades and lived there. It is importantly part of a cluster of houses that represent homes of defenders of Fort Griswold, not just Elisha, but Rufus Avery, Park Avery, and a group of others around that. But you may not know that Mother Bailey's neighbor to the north was former Major Noyes Barber, who was active in the Battle of the War of 1812, called into the Battle of Stonington, ran for Congress, served 7 terms in the U.S. Congress, all while living on the other corner of Thames and Broad Street. The house is on both the Connecticut and the National Register of Historic Places, and as are other Groton Bank structures, and it is part of both the National and Connecticut historic districts. Now, why doesn't the city want to maintain such a historic structure? Virtually all other towns around us have such a place. Whether you ask the town of Groton or East Lyme or Waterford, all of these towns have historic structures that they either own or help maintain. Why is it that the city of Groton doesn't want to spend a penny on it? I don't want to waste our money. I'm a frugal Dutchman, and but I think that just as we spend money on recreation and beaches and so forth, our historical heritage is also important. So I would urge you not to take any of the actions that have been mentioned so far, but explore every avenue to get funds to repair and restore the house. Some people say the house is in poor condition.
Yeah, Mr. Your time is expired.
Can I have 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Okay. Some people say the house is in bad condition. A couple of years ago, the report was that was in remarkably good condition for a house of its age. Many people have misjudgments about old houses. I bought my house on the corner of Monument and Meridian Street. There were 2x4s holding up the veranda roof instead of the Greek columns that are there today. If you walked on the veranda when it was raining, you could take a shower on it. And there were holes in the floor. Some people thought my house should be torn down for a parking lot. Thank goodness it wasn't. Parking lots are detrimental to making nice neighborhoods. And so I would urge that you take every step to try to see that the house is repaired and restored to the best extent practical. Thank you. And I don't have copies of this for all of you, but I will give the city clerk a copy, which I'm sorry, my printer cartridge is going far, but you can still read it.
If you want to email that to me, then I
Give
won't have
me
to
your
write
e-
about
give me your
it.
email.
I will write it down and make sure you get it before.
Okay, you can keep that as well,
Okay,
but I
thank
will
you, sir.
also email it.
Mike Boucher?
Many subjects, not enough time. I'll talk to you later. Mike Boucher, 16 Hillside Avenue. I'll speak first on the Bailey House. The Mother Bailey story is a great one, but is the Bailey House a wise choice to tell that story? The Bailey House, sad but true, it's time to pass it on to another organization. Taxpayers have incurred cost of around $400,000 so far for the Bailey House, and we are still hundreds of thousands of dollars short to correct the structural needs and the plumbing and heating systems to make the Bailey House usable and functional. More thought should be given to use city funds for others who have given much, much more, many of their lives, at the Battle of Fort Griswold. More thought should be given to use city funds to tell the stories of others who have given so much more. It is time for all people to be recognized for their sacrifice, and we need to do much more for the others that died at Fort Griswold, and Mother Bailey has had her time, and it's the others, minorities included, need to be included in that story. My next conversation will be about the sewer division. I hope somehow by now the City Council realizes that the serious revenue problem revenue problem our sewer division has, more than just a tweak is needed. Years of very poor management by city government has left sewer broke and broken. Poor decisions like ignoring the annual 5-year inspection of the digesters, have cost hundreds of thousands in cost repairs. Years of underfunding and now missing the revenue needs of a $5 million sewer budget by over $1 million forces taxpayers to now pay twice for sewer, a user tax and now property taxes also. It's hard to believe the mayor would have okayed a revenue stream based on water usage when it was discussed at length how all water is not sent to the sewer. The golf course was given as a prime example. Hard to believe the mayor would say just a tweak is needed when back in August, GU stated, we need to fix this sooner than later. They demonstrated that we were going to be significantly short on revenue stream, and the cost of service study was started by GU apparently without the council's knowledge soon after that. The very idea to reduce user tax rates is absurd when we are so many millions behind, and this would only kick the can down the road. Any unused bond funds should be used for the sewer infrastructure needs. The city should map out a 10-year plan to carry sewer until GU is done with the TVC payments, and then let GU apply that new revenue to sewer. Maybe we could use some of the GU funds held at CMEC to shore up sewer, just as we have done for TVC in the past. I do, however, would like to thank the mayor and GU for a very open, honest, and blunt presentation on the cost of service study for sewer. It was very informative, and I hope you all took that in. Thank you very much.
Sam Spano.
Honorable Mayor and Council, my name's Sam Spano. I live at 300 Thames Street. I'm not certain if this is the exact format, but I have a concern and question. There's rumors floating around about another attempt to make Thames Street one-way again. This was last attempted in 2008 and was shot down basically due to all the businesses on Thames Street were against it, as were about 99% of the citizens in Groton Bank. So I guess what I'm here to ask is there any truth to this rumor? Is this being looked at again, or is this just hopefully just a rumor? Thank you.
H.M. Newberry.
Horace Newberry, Thames Street, Groton. My question is, why was this building purchased, and what has changed since then to make it surplus? Any answer?
We can't respond until after.
Okay. Well, if recently the city tore down a couple of historic buildings. They were ancient, and I guess we're rid of them. But if you get down to efficiency, you could say, well, we have a surplus of governments in Groton, and if you make it really unpleasant for the people who live here, they may just say, well, we'll only have one government in Groton. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Councilor Russ, Horace,
Can I ask a
Councilor
question?
Russ is going to have a question to clarify. It's just to clarify something that you said.
I'm sorry.
You said that recently the city has torn down historic properties. What properties are you referring
The
to?
Costa properties.
Oh, okay.
And they gave the same excuse as I heard today, that it's all worn out, it cost $1 million to fix it, blah, blah, blah.
And do you know what year that was? Do you know what year that was that the Costa properties were torn down?
About 10 years ago?
I don't think it was that long, 5 to 10 maybe.
Well, it's less than 10, because it's been since I've been here. More than 5,
So someplace between 5
so
and 10.
5 and 10.
Okay.
That, by the way, if I can just interject a sentence, that was the home of Captain William H. Allen, the most famous of all whaling captains. He made millions, and he was also a prominent citizen of Groton and a wealthy banker in New London after his real days.
Very true.
Thank you.
Patrick, who's next on the list?
Barbara Fruit.
Barbara Frucht, 300 Brandigee Avenue. As president of the Board of Trustees of the Bill Memorial Library, I just want to publicly thank Groton Utilities for a very generous Christmas gift to us in order to improve our HVAC system. The library is an important spot here in Groton Bank, and people use it from all over the area. And again, a historical building, but the thoughtfulness that they decided to give us this grant, it's like coming down Christmas morning and seeing everything you wished for. And we work hard to try to do fundraising, and this was just a wonderful gift of Groton Utilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thanks. That's it on the list?
That's it on the list.
Okay, that's it for the list. Is there anyone in the audience who has not signed up who would like to speak? Okay. Response to citizens' petitions, comments? Councilor Sheffield?
To Ms. Archer regarding the Mother Bailey, I had presented a proposal with some of the bond money a few years ago, and it came before the Freeman as a bundled package, and sadly it got rejected by the Freeman. And a lot of folks didn't really know the purpose of that. They thought that was extra tax money, but it was money that we already had, you know, to us that we could allocate as we, you know, for the needs of the city. And my hope was, I had proposed, I believe, $250,000 to the Mother Bailey with the hopes of getting that started, with the hopes of the renovation process to put in the position to where we could either keep it or to sell, to put it, you know. And at the present time, as we found out a few weeks ago, we're sort of in a tough spot because it's going to cost a lot if we were to level it anyway. So I'm hoping, like I said, my hope was to get those grant funds in concert with something that we could give. And yeah, a joint process would be great if that could be done. We've been waiting for several years on the Mother Bailey side to see if you guys could obtain the funds to where, you know, something could happen. I know it's tough getting federal money in these times, especially we were in a bad recession a few years back, to where getting money from the federal government was pretty much impossible. I'm not sure how much the state's going to give. The state's obviously in a fiscal crisis right now, so you can, you know, that's even tough. So we discussed it at a workshop a few weeks ago. It didn't go far. As far as on our end, we're still waiting to hear from the Mother Bailey side and see what can be done. I mean, I'm a person who loves history, and I would like to see something like that kept together. But on our end, the building is falling apart. And, you know, something has to be done to where, okay, if it just falls down and collapses, is it worth putting it all back together again? So, you know, like I said, if there's something that you guys can do to, you know, to see what we can do, I'm all ears. I know there's others that may not see that way, but then we would have to bring that again to the Freeman to see if the people want that money allocated again, because it is the city's, money, and that's, the taxpayer is going to want to know if they're for putting the Mother Bailey back together. So that's my response, but I hope you guys can be successful.
Councilor Rusk?
I agree. I would love to see Mother Bailey stay. I would love it. I just don't think the city is the agency to own it. Why was it bought years ago? I don't know. I don't know that any of us.
I'll address those
okay.
questions.
I don't think anyone who's on the council itself, other than the mayor, was actually here when it was purchased. I have a really hard time spending money on a house that is falling down. I would love to see somebody come in and take control of it, and we don't want to see it leveled. Let me speak for myself. I don't want to see it leveled. We've already been through like Councilor Sheffield said, we've been through the Freeman process. It's been denied once. I would have loved to have spent the money then and have it be in much better shape. That was a good 2 to 3 years ago now, and we would be in a much better position if that had happened. The city doesn't have the money right now. It was bought in a time when the city had a little more money. I think that's why we're looking at making it surplus property, so then we can go out and ask for people to come in with bids and tell us how they can fix the property. And I don't want to have somebody come in and say, I want to level the property and build them all. Obviously the lot isn't big enough for that, but I want something that's going to work for that area. But the city's probably not the people to do it. We just don't have the funds right now, and nobody wants to see their taxes go up. I think everybody in this room can agree to that. There isn't a perfect solution for this. I wish there was. On another topic, on the one-way, we have discussed the possibility of one-way. It really has been in the grand scheme of how do you attract business to an area where there's not much parking. So it was one of the things that has been tossed around. We've also tossed around making parking lots behind buildings. The problem is it's a residential area and nobody wants a parking lot because parking lots are ugly, as somebody stated. It's definitely not a done deal. We definitely want to talk to the residents. We want to talk to the business owners. We want to bring business and we want to revitalize Thames Street as part of the TIF district that we've put in, the tax increment financing. I would love to speak to you more about ideas on how we can attract business without alienating the residents. So if you have a moment afterwards, I'd love to speak with you more. I think that's it for me.
Any other councilors, comments? Okay, let me see if I can fill in a couple blanks. Let me continue with the Thames Street one-way. Like Councilor Russ said, as part of our economic development strategy and the revitalization of Thames Street, one of the things I've asked us to look at is to reevaluate Thames Street one-way north to south. One of the things that happened last time was you had some energetic and enthusiastic guys that got people riled up and got people stirred up and came out en masse to vote things down. It was never really a public vote, but they influenced the committee to go away from Thames Street one-way. We're all familiar with Thames Street. There are some narrow areas, especially around that little slalom area, where you got to do the S-curve just before you get to Puffins, going north to south, just south of Mother Bailey House. That would help alleviate some of that. We also, the study that was done by Mulhone and McBroom identified roughly 275, I think it is, parking spaces that would be gained. So the question is, which do you do first? You do the parking, do you do the business? Which comes first? One of the things that I don't think we did well last time in this whole thing was, and sometimes this is a challenge that councils have, is that they start to move forward and they don't talk to the constituents about what the constituents want and get constituent input. One of my promises is that we are going to talk to every single business owner on Thames Street and try to address their concerns. I know, for example, Paul has a problem at the pasta place about if people park in front, he's not going to have a place to load and unload trucks. One of the suggestions was if we set up a loading zone for certain hours, then you still get the parking off hours, but during the day, it's set up so that nobody can park there and he can still get his parking. So we're looking at those kind of things. In addition to talking to business owners, my intent is everyone that lives on Thames Street, talk to all the residents, and then even go back up the side streets. The intent, my intent, where I'm looking at is going north to south and keeping it all the way south to the end where Smith Street comes down, Pequannock goes up, Eastern Point goes up. What I don't want to do is drive traffic up side streets. For example, Baker, Allen, Latham's up this way, Ledyard. So that's one of the concerns that I have. We're also looking at this in conjunction with the 5-year expansion is not the right word, 5-year plan that Electric Boat has for bringing on 5,000 additional employees. Because parking is a problem. Right now, we don't have the room. EB is finishing a parking study and a traffic study, and as soon as they're done, then I'm going to convene a study with them, us, the town manager, the executive director of COG, so we can try to figure out how are you going to get in these additional 5,000 people, how are you going to get them out, and what are you going to do with them when they're here? So we're looking, all that goes in conjunction. It's a multi-layered kind of thing. As Councilor Russ said, I'm interested in talking to you at some point about concerns that you have, recommendations that you have, those kind of things. All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to think out of the box and see if we can move the city forward. There's no edict that is going to come down and say, you're going to do this come hell or high water. We're looking to how can we work with everybody, how can we move the city forward, and how can we develop Thames Street? Because that is something that is very near and dear to me that I would like to see done. So hopefully that answers your question or at least gives you some more information. Horace, you asked questions about why was Mother Bailey House purchased. Mother Bailey House, the adjacent lot, were purchased for a couple of reasons. One, the opportunity existed because there was an individual that had owned that property that had cut up the house and basically made it rooms to let. And the house was in bad repair. It exceeded the normal occupancy that it should have been. There were, between that owner and some previous owners, there were some changes, if you will, that made the house kind of unsafe. When we bought the property, one of the questions that I asked during the executive session was, what's the true cost of the house? And at the time, they said, well, here's the value of the house, and here's what the plan is, and those kind of things. And I said, you're missing my point. My point is, you buy the house for this, but we know we have asbestos problems, so you got to abate that. You might have lead problems, you got to abate that. We know that we have some foundation. When we bought that, we knew there were some foundation issues, so you got to pay for that. So the true value of the house is up here somewhere. Okay, that was never 100% quantified. There was a period of time that I was going to the council to ask for $100,000 for stabilization. We did what we could do with our local crews to help stabilize the outside, also to dig around so that the water would shed away from the foundation and not be funneled towards the foundation. We were partially successful in the ability to, in doing that so that the foundation didn't continue to rot away from extra water. let me see, where am I going with this? But at the same time that I came up with going to ask for $100,000, there was an issue with the Zabierski house. And the Zabierski house needed money. And so the question was, where do you put your money? Do you put your money at the Z house or do you put your money at the Mother Bailey house? The Z house was a revenue producer. The Z house and the Tyler house are known entities and are landmarks, already pre-existing landmarks in the city. So the council at the time decided to put that money toward the Zabierski house, and therefore the money went away. Later on, as Councilor Sheffield said, we were going to repurpose some bond money, and there were some people that got an incorrect word out, but got word out nonetheless. The Freemen came out en masse and voted down. The challenge was there was a bunch of things bundled together, and they were more angry at the Mother Bailey house than the Costa property. So people came out and they just, because it wasn't set up like a Chinese menu, you either vote, you took it all, or it was all thumbs up or all thumbs down. And the voters came out, and in the end, it was thumbs down. And as a result of that, the money was not available. We have talked individually to people and voters in the past, and people have come to us and said, we do not want you to spend any more city money on the Mother Bailey house. We had to put some money aside, put some money into the house a couple years ago because the front was starting to bow and sway. And so we did that stabilization project in order to keep the house from falling down. But if you go there now, one of the challenges that was pointed out to me is that somebody, several owners ago, when they replaced the windows were put over the clapboard. Instead of putting them in and then tying the clapboard into the sides of the windows, they just put it over the clapboard. And what happened is, now you basically got a funnel up here that catches the water and forces the water to come down toward the foundation. And that's a problem. If you go now and look at the foundational pieces, you'll see that some of the 12 by 12s are rotting and they're just, it's in bad shape. If you go look at the front porch, if you look at the two columns, if you look at the left-hand column, you'll see that the bottom two support pieces are rotting, and they are actually collapsing under the weight of the porch, the upstairs porch, and that the porch itself is starting to rot. So we're taking a look at that, but this is this is one of the things that forced me to get the real estate committee together, to get some recommendations from them, then come to the council. One of the things that we did 2 to 3 years ago now is we had a committee that was formed. There were several different recommendations from the committee. One of the recommendations was to get a HIP tag grant, and that HIP tag grant was going to pay for the environmentals and architectural study. And then once we got that grant, then that was going to qualify us for another grant that was in excess of $100,000. We were unsuccessful with the HIP tag grant, and then we're told subsequently not to ever consider putting HIP tag grants again because we were no longer qualified or eligible, and they would no longer consider us. So when that happened, that shot down a couple different options that were presented during the committee. One of those was to have the city restore it. One of those was to make it a museum. Basically, there are museums that are out there where the inside is kind of gutted so that you can see the architecture. It would be an architectural museum, so you can see the architecture of the time. It would be exposed walls. But because we could not get the grants that we needed in order to build us up in the structure, then it ended up going to where we are. And that's part of the challenge is where we are now. I want to answer your question about why was it purchased, what makes it surplus. There's a recommendation from the Real Estate Committee that the council will consider tonight on whether or not that property should be surplus property. Once that decision is made, that allows us to move forward to whatever the next steps are. So I'm going to ask the council to make it surplus property today, and then at our next committee of the whole, we're going to go into additional detail. Committee of the wholes are also open meetings. They're open meetings, but they're not comment sessions for you. But I'm going to ask the council, we're going to bring in Dennis Godere couldn't be here tonight, he's sick, so he's going to talk more about the options tonight. Finance Director Uhas will talk about RFPs and links and those kind of things, but talk about what our options are with this. And one of the things that I've always said from the beginning is that demolition of the Mother Bailey House is absolutely a last resort, right? Now, the challenge that we have that was not our choice, not this council's choice, because I voted for the Mother Bailey House in the end, but is that the council now has a property that is a potential liability to the city. And if it fell into Broad Street or fell into Thames Street or heaven help us, it fell into the house next door, then that could be a big problem. So that's what this council is wrestling with and what they will wrestle with in the future. There are other suggestions. I have met twice in the last 2 months with Susan Archer and representatives of the Friends of the Anna Warner Bailey House. And we are looking at other options. I have my attorneys looking at a couple of the options that they recommended. I don't know if we're going to be able to get there or not. Initial indications are there's risk involved for the city and it's potentially problematic, but my attorney has taken a quick look at that. The cost of properties, the print shop specifically, I will speak to that. When I was on the council, this is probably the second largest turnout. The largest turnout I saw, there were 15 people that came here, and they came here to speak about the print shop that was there. That's that old white building that was there. And there were wild animals that were there. There were some homeless people that were there. They were concerned about rat infestations, those kind of things. They came and spoke out about that, and that was the impetus for removal of that facility. See, is there anything else? I think I addressed the questions that were out there. Council, is there anything else? Councilor Rusk.
In making the Mother Bailey House surplus property, we have discussed putting it out for RFPs. I would love to see an RFP from the Mother Bailey Foundation with what you plan to do with it, how you plan to raise the money, all of those things. It would be my dream to hand this off to you. So that is actually like our first step in trying to get somebody who is capable and financially sound enough to take over the Mother Bailey House. And that is the only way that house, I feel, is going to stay afloat. Well, the mayor's correct. We don't want to demolish it, and that has been our definite, plea since, what was it, 3 years ago when we ran the study, 2 years ago? We don't want to see it torn down. It is a last resort, but it's unsafe, or it could be potentially unsafe at this point. Mr. Newberry, we have thrown around what to do with the cost of property, the upper cost of property. We've obviously addressed the lower cost of property and made it into a park, but I would love to talk with you about ideas for the upper cost of property, because it really has been something that we've tossed around for a while, and no money has been really spent on it, and we really don't have a clear vision on what to do with that. So I'd love to speak with you about your thoughts on that. That's it.
Anyone else? One last thing, Susan, you and I talked about this before, with the publicity that hopefully we're getting from this public meeting, this could result in a save the clock tower moment where you get energy and enthusiasm from the general public. And if we could have that so that the donations rise and you or some organization is financially viable, the council would not be disappointed in that. So, all right, that's it for responses to citizens' petitions. Approval of the minutes. I need a motion to approve December 15, 2018 Special Committee of the Whole meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Need a motion for December 17, 2018 Special Joint City Council Groton Utilities Commission meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Need a motion for the December 17, 2018 Special Mayor and Council meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Communications and reports. Councilor Rusk.
No report.
Nothing to report.
Councilor Sheffield.
Nothing to report.
Councilor Depot.
Nothing to report.
Councilor Carter.
Nothing.
Okay, where are we going? Okay. I have one thing to report. We have talked about Quantic Road and Lot SIP. Lot SIP was on the table, then Lot SIP was off the table. Lot SIP is back on the table. I have signed an agreement, agree to commit to funding. It is a $2.185 million grant. We're waiting for the kickoff meeting. And we're going to be going to the town for a reallocation of the road bond for engineering. We're going to use, instead of using some of that money for paving roads, we're going to use some of that money for engineering. We had previously gotten the permission, and then we went to them and said, nope, we're not getting Lot SIP, so we want to use that money for something else. So now that we are getting Lot SIP, we have to go back and get reauthorization for the money for engineering. Are there any committee referrals? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to new business. Councilor Rusk.
Thank you. Resolution R-19-1-1. Therefore, be it resolved that the City Council declare 108 Thames Street and 0 Broad Street, Groton, Connecticut, as surplus to the needs of the city. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
What area, what was the?
Mother Bailey.
location?
Mother Bailey.
What's that? Oh, dang. Okay. And 0 also.
0 is the
And
one right
oh,
behind it.
Oh, okay.
We're bundling them together?
That's right, okay. Fresh my memory here.
Okay. Councilor Rusk.
As I've stated, I feel like this is the best way to go for the city. I understand your concerns, but I feel like going into an RFP is really the best way to preserve the Mother Bailey house. The city does not have the money. We've already gone to the Freeman with this, and they voted no. I can't see this house continue to deteriorate under the city, and the city does not have the funds to pay for it. So that's where I stand.
One of the documents that you have in front of you is the disposition policy, and we will be discussing this at the Committee of the Whole. So this is the disposition policy so that you know what our options are. I am scheduling a 8-24 meeting for a hearing rather on 1/15 of this month for the planning and zoning. Thank you. Because the 8/24 is this. Once it's a surplus property and we want to use it for something else, the Planning and Zoning Committee looks at the property to make sure it's for the appropriate use. So the fact that we would go with, whatever the disposition is. So surplus property, that's what they're voting on, not what we're going to do with it down the road, because right now, we don't know what we're going to do down the road.
And what date?
And they could, 115,
Thank you.
they could have a negative referral, they could have a positive referral, or they could have a positive referral with recommendations. And when they looked at the Groton Heights School, they had a positive referral with recommendations. The RFP that we're looking at is something similar to what Groton Heights School put out, which is we're looking for what the best use is. So we're going to have it open enough, right? RFP's open enough that we're not driving it in a direction.
It's not going to be necessarily cost only. As far as the sales price, it will be. There's lots of criteria that's involved. They have to plan what their use for the property is, provide sketches and certain things that we do require. And one thing to keep in mind, it does have to come back to council for approval. So this isn't the last say this is just doing it as surplus. If the RFP goes out, this would still need to come back to council for approval for whatever the recommendation is.
I'm looking at doing things in parallel. That's why the 824 now. And then we will talk more about the RFP at the committee of the whole. But Ron, you were talking to me earlier today about rough timelines. Can you share that with the council?
Probably, we're thinking it would be like a 3-month window from starting of writing the RFP. The disposition policy has that it would be received approximately 4 weeks from the date of public advertisement. So there is a month period where it will be advertised for sale, and then probably another month after that with going through vetting and then going through the council approval and so forth. So it's probably looking around a 3-month period from start to finish.
The other thing that we're going to look to do is try to get this out on as many venues as we possibly can so that we can get as many proposals for this and not just go through the normal route, try to get it out to more I don't know, venues is the best term that I can think of, but get it out so that people can see it. Any other questions or comments on this? Councilor Sheffield.
If we decide to put this out for bid, do we have to take care of the property at some point prior to potentially an eventual sale? So does that have to be taken care of prior, or do we have to have a stipulation as an as-is situation? Or because obviously if it doesn't work out too well and we have to fork out prior, then that could be costly to the city. And that was my other concern when we last had a meeting regarding the disposition.
One of the suggestions that you're going to get at the COW, and I was going to bring it up tonight, and I've decided not to do it, we'll do it at the COW, is we were looking at, one of the suggestions that came out of the real estate committee was to do an environmental study on it. The environmental study is a few $1,000s, but what that would do is that would help us quantify what it is, and also future bidders, right? That way they would have an idea of what to bid on. Because what we're trying to do is trying to get more bidders than less. But that's going to be something we're going to talk about at the committee of the whole. That's not something we're going to be talking about tonight.
Aren't these questions that can be addressed forward then? That will come up another time. I think we're just kind of going back and forth. This is just to get it out there. Nothing can happen to the Mully Bailey house until we vote on it.
That's right.
It's simple as that.
Councilor Depot, you had a...
Oh, I was just going to say, I know on the procedures that you gave us, it does say in here that the purpose is to do it as is. And I know that I was involved in the Groton Heights bids, and those bids came, some bids had a proposal that the town would expend some money and some did not. So it also can be up to whoever bids as part of their bid what they think we should be responsible for, and that can also guide which bid we picked, what suits the city better. And that's all part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
One quick.
Councilor Rossi.
If we make this surplus property and no bids come in that we agree with, can we, what's the procedure
We can put
then?
another RFP out.
Okay.
That is right? I didn't just,
Yeah, we don't have to.
Okay.
We don't have to accept a bid. Okay.
because I thought you and I had already talked about this. Yes, we don't have to accept any of those bids, we'll put another RFP out.
Okay.
And
Thank
if
you.
the real estate committee comes up with their recommendation and the council doesn't agree with it, then, I mean, it still has to come to you for a vote, whatever that recommendation
Right.
is.
So nothing is going to be done without council approval. I'll give you my word, but even if I didn't give you my word, it's procedure. Okay? Anything else? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Councilor Becker.
Resolution 19-1-2. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and council initially approved to repeal Ordinance 112, an ordinance regulating the use of public and private sewers and drains, private wastewater disposal, the installation and connection of building sewers, and the discharge of waters and wastes into the public sewer system, and providing penalties for violations thereof in the city of Groton, county of New London, state of Connecticut. I so move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion. Director G'day, if I could get you to come to the podium, as you are going to be Exhibit A.
So with the move of the WPCA from City Council to the Utility Commission, the Utility Commission actually updated the rules and regulations. I just wanted to tell you the process that we did when we did that. Every year we true up the rules and regs, and the Utility Commission looks at it and makes sure it's right. This year, with the movement of the WPCA incorporating that into the Utility Commission, we took Ordinance 112 and we basically dumped that into the rules and regulations. If you look at Section 9 of the rules and regulations, it's actually the sewer part of the rules and regulations. At that point, we had the group, all the different groups, go through it and hone it up to be current, because the ordinance hadn't been modified in a few years, and it was something that was looked at, but it was large and ornery. So at this point, we had the water group and the distribution portion of the utility takes care of the collection system, and we had the PAF portion actually look at it, go through the whole thing, make annotations. We edited it, and then we brought it to the city attorney, and we had them look at the entire rules and regulations, and we spent a significant amount of time honing up what was the parts and pieces that came from Ordinance 112 to Section 9 in the rules and regs, and we modernized that to be true to the CGS as current. So basically what's happened is the rules and regulations have taken place of the Ordinance 112, and we had that checked by multiple people, and I had the attorney actually read 112, look at all the different parts, and make sure that we had all the current essence of that in the rules and regulations. That was the process that we followed. At this point, it took us a while to get the rules and regulations approved by everybody, and we were rolling it out for Basra, and there was a delay in moving to the last step to repeal the ordinance, because Basra's rules and regulations were actually part of this book, and we had to actually separated it out, because adding the sewerage into the rules and regulations made it too big, and Basra didn't want to have that much of a book. So maybe a long story for something simple.
Questions or comments? Councilor Depot.
So the WPCA,
Water Pollution Control Authority.
what does that entity, is that now?
The City Council used to be the WPCA. We moved the WPCA into the Utility Commission. So the Utility Commission is now the Utility Commission, Groton Utility Commission / Water Pollution Control Authority. So when we move the sewer from the city, from the tax base, into the enterprise account underneath Groton Utilities, we then move the WPCA authority over to the Utility Commission. Go ahead, please.
So, in these rules, there's references to WPCA, the commissioner of the WPCA, or commissioners. So all of those things were just inherited automatically by the utilities commissioners completely.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mayor Gersh?
Would it be reasonable for me to think that by reading this, that the rule is still there, it's just in another book?
It would be extremely reasonable.
Thank you.
Councilor Rusk?
I'm going to just respectfully request that before we have to do this again, that we get this information before the night that we vote on it, so that we can look through it, because I'm taking your word on this, but I like to read through things and make sure it's all there.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
Councilor Evo?
Well, in that same vein, we're kind of doing this later than we maybe should have? Could we not have done, like, because the rules were moved, this says effective August 2018?
True.
Okay.
We probably could have done it a little bit earlier, but we decided, well, initially, you had a combined set of rules between the Utility Commission and Groton Utility Commission and the Basra Utility Commission. And so we ended up having to separate Basra and Groton because Basra said, we're not going to approve this. We only want to talk about what applies to Basra. We only want Basra in there. We don't want Basra / Groton. We want Basra. So that's what happened. So we took it out. This was approved at a separate meeting. Basra was approved, and we probably could have had this brought this to you to rescind earlier. But in the review, when I was going through and was reviewing things to make sure we were tying up loose ends, we identified that ordinance 112 had not been rescinded. And the reason it wasn't rescinded was because we were waiting on this. But you're right, there was a little bit of a delay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Deputy Mayor Garish.
Let me see. Resolution R19-1-3. Therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and Council authorize Groton Utilities Management to issue a purchase order to Harris Computer Systems Incorporated, 62133 Collection Center Drive, Chicago, Illinois, for annual maintenance and support of the North Star billing system and add-on modules used for the Groton Utilities / Basra Light and Power Company electric and water utility billing in the amount of $74,730.43 to be paid from funds available in the approved fiscal year 2019 customer service budget. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Director, good day.
This item is a routine, annual reoccurring that comes here because it's a purchase order. We issue over $50,000 to maintain the customer information system that customer service puts all the customer data into.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Councilor Sheffield.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution R-19-1-4. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and council authorize Groton Utilities Management to retain the lobbying services of Medicae LLC, 1 Gold Street, Hartford, Connecticut, for lobbying services pertaining to electric, water, wastewater, and any other utility matters as necessary in an amount not to exceed $108,000 and no cents to be paid from the professional services lobbying account in the approved fiscal year 2018-2019 and fiscal year 2019 and 2020 Utilities Department budgets, and furthermore, that the City Council be apprised of this action with the recommendation that it concur and that Mayor Keith Hedrick be authorized to execute the agreement. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Director?
This is also an annual item that comes either at the end of December or the very beginning of January. And this item actually crosses fiscal years. There was an attempt to try to bring it into the fiscal year so that we do it in July every year. But due to the lobbying rules, there's a renewal that happens by January 15th of each year. So it keeps it pretty much parked here. This is routine, and we do use the lobbyist as it, most notably recently for the water treatment plant grant that we received. They help us get funding like that, and they communicate with the lawmakers at different levels to communicate the needs of the city and Groton Utilities.
Councilor Depot.
Do you know the amount it was last year?
It may have been slightly less. There was an increase in the last term. The increase went through last year, I believe July 1st. So it was halfway through the last split year. Does that make sense? Because right now we're approving January 1st through December 31st. Last year there was a slight increase on July 1st.
I guess I don't understand. That's my question. What's the increase from last year to this year?
I actually don't remember. It was a few $1,000s a month, I believe.
No, it wouldn't be a few thousand a month, because that would be a lot.
It was 108.
Well, this is 100.
I should have grabbed that.
This is 108 for the year. Right?
It was about 100. But I'm just speculating.
Well, and just to clarify, so are you saying that last year it was approved in January and then increased in July?
Last year it was approved in January with the increase as part of last year's resolution.
It was built, I'm sorry.
Councilor Russ?
It was built into that resolution?
I believe it was built in and discussed.
And
go ahead.
Do we have any anticipation that this will be raised again in July?
It is not going to be raised again.
Okay.
Last year's increase, the July 1st increase, came in the quote we received last December, and it was, the resolution was built that way. We discussed the increase, I believe, at last year's, and the term is fixed for the 12 months.
Councilor Russ?
Do we always use the same company, and are there other companies out there that we've looked at?
We have used this company since, I guess,
Long time.
Long time.
more than 10 years.
We've used this company for a long time. Mark DeBella has I understand your point. We should look at competition. Mark has done some good things for us. We're right.
Okay.
With the water, I mean, the first Friday that I was here, I got a phone call at 4 o'clock, said, congratulations, you have $15 million. So that's a pretty good phone call.
Mm-hmm.
He has also been active last year and will be active this year in the Energy and Technology Group with the potential CMAQ legislation that may come out. He will be representing the utility and will keep us apprised of changes. And it's not just for that, it's other energy. So he's going to be looking at electric, water, and sewer, and bills that impact and affect us. Some of them, for example, last year when there was a PA 18-50, which is the one that stipulates how much green energy you have to have, he kept us apprised of that. So, Councilor Depot.
With the potential of a lot of activity this coming year, is this 108, is this set, or is this like a retainer, like an attorney, where it could be more?
No, this is 100% fixed. There are years that he's less busy, and in my few years here, there's been a couple of years he has been slammed busy by us. It is just a firm fixed fee for the calendar year.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. There is no executive session, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.